Right now, somewhere in the world, a man is selling vegetables at a market stall. He has no following, no students, no reputation. He has never written a book, never given a lecture, never been recognized as anything other than ordinary. And according to Ibn Arabi, he may be one of the people holding this world together. Not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. One of a small hidden group of saints, the Abdal, whose inner state is so aligned with divine will that their very existence functions as a pillar sustaining creation. And the defining feature of every single one of them is that you will never know who they are. They don't know who each other are. In some accounts, they don't even fully know what they are themselves. This is not folklore. This is one of the most seriously debated concepts in classical Islamic scholarship, discussed by Ibn Arabi in the Futuhat al-Makkiyah, examined by Ibn Qayyim, transmitted through hadith, and argued over by scholars for 1,000 years. Today, I want to show you exactly what the tradition says about who they are, how many there are, what they actually do, and, most uncomfortably, what it would mean if one of them is someone you have already dismissed. Start with the word. Abdal. It is the plural of badal, meaning substitute, replacement. The name itself is the first clue to what these people are. The classical explanation, transmitted through multiple chains, is that when one of the Abdal dies, God substitutes another in their place, so the number never drops. The world, in this framework, is never without them. The moment one leaves, a replacement is already prepared. Ibn Arabi in the Futuhat is precise about the number. He says 40. Always 40, not approximately 40, exactly 40. 30 of them operate through the quality Ibrahim possessed, the quality of the Khalil, the intimate friend of God. The remaining 10 operate through a higher station he associates with Musa, the one who spoke directly with God. This precision matters, because it tells you something about the concept's internal logic. This is not a vague spiritual category where you can generously assign the title to anyone who seems pious. The tradition treats it as a specific number, a specific function, a specific station. And most people, regardless of how righteous they are, do not occupy it. Here is where the concept becomes genuinely strange and genuinely important. The Abdal are not primarily teachers, they are not primarily healers, they are not recognized scholars or famous guides. Their function in the world is not what they say or what they do in the ordinary sense. It is what they are. Ibn Arabi describes their role using a term that appears across multiple classical sources. They are autad, pegs. The way tent pegs hold a structure in place, not by moving or performing, but simply by being fixed in the ground. Their inner state of alignment with divine will is so complete that they function as stabilizing points in the spiritual architecture of the world. Al-Hakim al-Tirmidhi, writing before Ibn Arabi, described it this way: "The earth does not become empty of people through whom God repels calamity from his servants. This is not punishment theology. It is not saying that when bad things happen, it is because the saints failed. It is saying that far more would be happening, far more rupture, far more collapse, if these people were not present." The most striking implication of this framework is that their work is entirely invisible. A doctor's work produces a healed patient. A scholar's work produces transmitted knowledge. An Abdal's work produces, by this account, nothing you can point to. It produces the absence of things that would otherwise have occurred. It produces the disasters that did not happen. This is the section Ibn Arabi is most specific about, and it is the part most people find hardest to accept. The Abdal do not perform sainthood. They do not have large followings or impressive reputations. In most accounts, they live entirely ordinary lives, working ordinary jobs, speaking in ordinary ways, wearing nothing that marks them as special. Ibn Arabi goes further and says this ordinariness is not accidental. It is structural to what they are. The logic is this: the moment genuine spiritual attainment becomes visible, it attracts recognition, and recognition activates the ego, both in the recognized and in those recognizing them. What Ibn Arabi calls the station of the Abdal is specifically incompatible with being known, because being known creates a self that is known, and the Abdal are precisely people in whom that self has been dissolved, to a degree that makes the station possible in the first place. He says, and this is the detail that stays with you, that many of the Abdal are hidden even from themselves, not in the sense that they are unaware of their spiritual state generally, but in the sense that the specific designation, the awareness that they are one of the 40, is not always given to them. Some know, others simply live inside their state, without the label. Who approaches this topic from a more hadith-focused angle than Ibn Arabi transmits narrations suggesting that the Abdal can sometimes be identified by a single sign. People feel genuine peace in their presence, without being able to explain why. Not inspiration, not admiration. Peace, the kind that has no source you can point to. Here is where the channel's commitment to honesty requires a pause. The concept of the Abdal is not accepted without debate in the Islamic tradition. Ibn Taymiyyah, whose legal and theological rigor is not in question, examined the hadith evidence for the Abdal carefully, and found most of the specific narrations weak in their chains of transmission. He did not deny the possibility of hidden saints. He was careful about that distinction, but he was skeptical of the specific numerical claims and the specific functions attributed to them in some Sufi accounts. What this means for how you hold this concept, the existence of people at unusually high levels of spiritual realization, is not seriously disputed in the tradition. The Quran and authentic hadith both point to the reality that some human beings reach stations of proximity to God that others do not. What is disputed is the specific architecture, the number 40, the specific roles, the claim that their presence literally sustains the physical world. Hold the concept the way the most careful scholars held it, as a real possibility pointing to something true about the spiritual structure of creation, without making specific claims about specific individuals that the evidence cannot support. This is what makes the concept practically important rather than just theologically interesting. If the tradition is even directionally correct, if there exist people whose inner state is so refined that their presence does something the visible world cannot measure, then the person you just dismissed matters in a way you cannot calculate. The rude shopkeeper who nonetheless gave you exact change when you were short. The quiet woman on the bus who said nothing, but whose presence made the journey feel different. The father of 3 working night shifts, who has never read a word of Ibn Arabi, and could not define tawakkul, but whose trust in God runs so deep it has never once cracked under pressure that would break most people. Ibn Arabi's point is not that any of these specific people are abdal. His point is that the criteria by which you would identify one of the 40 have nothing to do with the criteria by which you normally identify a person worth paying attention to. Reputation, scholarship, visibility, articulation. None of these are it. What is it then? A complete absence of personal agenda, a will that has become so transparent to divine will that distinguishing between them is no longer meaningful, and an effect on those around them, peace, clarity, a sense of being held that they themselves may not be aware they produce. There are 40 of them right now, if the tradition is correct. 40 people alive today, in whose presence the world is more stable than it would otherwise be. You have almost certainly already encountered one. You almost certainly did not notice. That is either the most humbling idea in the Islamic tradition or the most convenient one, depending on what you do with it. The humbling version asks you to look again at every person you have already written off. The convenient version lets you romanticize hidden saints at a safe distance without it changing anything about how you treat the person in front of you. Ibn Arabi would say, the test of whether you actually understood the Abdal is whether it changed the second one, not the first. Comment below. If you had to guess, is there someone in your life whose presence gave you peace you could never fully explain?